Hey, when you hear volcano and United States in the same sentence, I bet your mind jumps straight to Yellowstone. That massive supervolcano in Wyoming with its geysers and hot springs gets all the headlines, and for good reason. It's a geological beast, capable of reshaping the planet if it ever fully lets loose. But here's the thing. Yellowstone's just one piece of a much bigger, much wilder puzzle. There are other volcanoes, powerful, restless, and hidden in plain sight, scattered across the U.S., and they're not getting the attention they deserve. Some of these sleeping giants could surprise you, maybe even make you rethink what's simmering beneath your own backyard. So, let S step out of Yellowstone, S shadow, and uncover the secret volcanic forces shaping America, S landscape. Ready to have your mind blown? Yellowstone's a legend, no question. It's one of the world's largest active supervolcanoes, sitting on a magma chamber so massive it could fill the Grand Canyon several times over. If it erupted, we're talking global consequences, ash clouds that could cool the planet, disrupt agriculture and ground flights for years. Scientists estimate it's erupted 3 times in the last 2.1 million years, with the last big one about 640,000 years ago. That's why it's always in the news, why it's got its own volcano observatory, and why people are obsessed with whether it's due for another eruption. Spoiler, it's not showing signs of an imminent catastrophe, but it's still a hotspot, literally and figuratively. But here's where it gets interesting. Yellowstone's fame overshadows other U.S. volcanoes that are just as fascinating, and in some cases just as dangerous. While Yellowstone's a supervolcano, meaning it could produce an eruption with a volcanic explosivity index, VEI, of 8, there are dozens of other active or potentially active volcanoes across the country that don't need to be super to cause serious trouble. From remote Alaskan islands to quiet peaks in the Pacific Northwest, these hidden threats are waking up, and they've got stories to tell. Let's head to the Pacific Northwest, where the Cascade Range stretches from Northern California to British Columbia. This is volcano country, home to some of the most iconic and potentially deadly peaks in the U.S. You've probably heard of Mount St. Helens, the volcano that blew its top in 1980, killing 57 people and blanketing the region in ash. That eruption was a wake-up call, reminding us that these mountains aren't just pretty backdrops for hiking trails, but St. Helens isn't alone in the Cascades, and it's not even the most concerning one today. Take Mount Rainier just outside Seattle. At 14,411 feet, it's a postcard-perfect peak, but don't let its beauty fool you. Rainier's got a fiery heart, and it is considered one of the most dangerous volcanoes in the world, not because it is likely to erupt tomorrow, but because of its proximity to a major metropolitan area. Over 2 million people live in the Seattle-Tacoma area, and Rainier's slopes are laced with glaciers that could melt during an eruption, triggering catastrophic mud flows called lahars. These fast-moving slurries of rock, ash, and water could bury entire towns in minutes. The U.S. Geological Survey, USGS, ranks Rainier as a very high-threat volcano, and yet it's often overshadowed by Yellowstone's hype. Then there's Mount Shasta in Northern California. At 14,179 feet, it's another stunner, sacred to Native American tribes and a magnet for spiritual seekers. But Shasta's got a restless side. It last erupted in 1786, and scientists say it's got a 1 in 3 chance of erupting again in the next 30 years. If it does, the nearby towns of Weed and Mount Shasta City could face ashfall, pyroclastic flows, and lahars. Unlike Yellowstone, which is remote, Shasta's right in the middle of communities, highways, and infrastructure. Why don't we talk about it more? Maybe because it's not a supervolcano, but don't let that fool you. Smaller eruptions can still wreak havoc. Now, let's go way off the mainland to Alaska, where volcanoes are as common as grizzly bears. The Aleutian Arc, a chain of islands stretching into the Bering Sea, is one of the most volcanically active regions in the world. Over 40 active volcanoes dot this remote landscape, and they're not just sitting pretty, they're rumbling. Take Mount Cleveland, a stratovolcano on Chuginadak Island. It's erupted dozens of times in the last century, with its most recent activity in 2023 sending ash plumes 20,000 feet into the air. These eruptions disrupt air travel across the Pacific, as ash can clog jet engines and ground flights for days. Or consider Pavlov Volcano, another Aleutian troublemaker. It's one of the most active volcanoes in North America, with eruptions almost every decade. In 2016, Pavlov spewed ash 37,000 feet high, forcing airlines to reroute and leaving communities on edge. The thing about Alaska's volcanoes is their isolation. They're far from major cities, so they don't get the same press as Yellowstone or even Rainier. But their remoteness doesn't make them less dangerous. Ashfall can blanket entire ecosystems, disrupt fishing industries, and affect global air routes. Plus, many of these volcanoes are poorly monitored due to their inaccessibility, which means we might not see an eruption coming until it's too late. Think the Southwest is all deserts and cacti? Think again. Arizona and New Mexico are home to volcanic fields that could catch you by surprise. The San Francisco Volcanic Field in northern Arizona near Flagstaff hasn't erupted in nearly 1,000 years, but it's not extinct, just dormant. This field includes over 600 volcanic vents, with Sunset Crater being the most famous, erupting around 1085 AD. The lava flows and cinder cones from that event reshaped the landscape, and scientists say another eruption is possible, though not imminent. If it happens, Flagstaff's growing population and nearby highways could be at risk from ash and lava. New Mexico's got its own volcanic secrets like the Valles caldera. This massive crater, formed by a supervolcano eruption 1.25 million years ago, is often compared to Yellowstone because of its size and geothermal activity. While it's not expected to erupt anytime soon, its hot springs and gas emissions remind us it's still active. Then there's the Zuni Bandera volcanic field, where lava flows as recent as 3,000 years ago created stunning landscapes like El Malpais National Monument. These fields might seem quiet, but their geological youth means they could stir again, potentially disrupting local communities and infrastructure. Here's where things get really wild. Did you know there are volcanic risks on the East Coast? Yeah, I said it. The East Coast. New Hampshire's Ossipee Mountains are home to a caldera formed 120 million years ago, and while it's not active today, it's a reminder that volcanic activity isn't just a West Coast thing. More concerning, though, are the seismic zones like the Central Virginia seismic zone, which isn't volcanic but could be influenced by ancient tectonic forces tied to volcanic activity millions of years ago. These areas don't have active volcanoes, but they hint at a deeper geological restlessness that scientists are still unraveling. So why don't we hear more about these places? For one, Yellowstone's supervolcano status sucks up all the oxygen in the room. Its potential for global catastrophe makes it a media darling, while smaller, more localized threats like Rainier or Pavlov don't get the same spotlight. Plus, many of these volcanoes are in remote areas, think Alaska-S Aleutians or Arizona-S backcountry, where eruptions might not make national news unless they disrupt something big, like air travel. Monitoring is another issue. The USGS does incredible work, but with over 160 active or potentially active volcanoes in the U.S., not all of them have real-time monitoring equipment. Budgets are tight, and priority goes to the highest-risk sites. Then there's the human factor. We tend to ignore what's not immediate. If a volcano hasn't erupted in a few hundred years, it's easy to assume it's safe. But volcanoes don't work on human timelines. A dormant volcano can wake up with little warning, and when it does, the consequences can be catastrophic, especially in populated areas like the Cascades or even Flagstaff. Here's the deal. America. S volcanic landscape is way more complex than most of us realize. From the glacier-capped peaks of the Cascades to the windswept islands of the Aleutians, from the deserts of the Southwest to the ancient calderas of the East. These hidden forces are shaping our world in ways we don't always see. They're not just geological curiosities, they're reminders of the Earth's raw power simmering just beneath the surface. The good news? Scientists are watching. The USGS and its volcano observatories track seismic activity, gas emissions, and ground deformation to catch early warning signs. But we can't rely on them alone. Communities near these volcanoes need to be prepared. Think evacuation plans, ashfall response strategies, and infrastructure resilience. And we, as curious humans, need to pay attention. These volcanoes might be hidden, but they're not silent. They're whispering, rumbling, waiting for their moment. So, next time you think of volcanoes in the U.S., don't just picture Yellowstone's steaming geysers. Think of Mount Rainier looming over Seattle, Mount Cleveland spitting ash into the Alaskan sky, or the ancient lava flows of New Mexico. These are America's unknown volcanoes, and they're waking up. The question isn't if they'll erupt, but when, and whether we'll be ready when they do. Let's keep our eyes on the ground beneath our feet. It's got stories to tell, and they're not all quiet ones.